Can't decide and torn between a romantic, comedy, action, or an indie film to watch for the weekend? Well. Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast is your ultimate guide to the latest movies. Join us as we dissect the latest on the blockbusters. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast.
Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Movie Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your gracious host, Melissa Goller, and I'm so excited to air my show on the GSMC Network. I love podcasts and I love film. After all, I write them and I get them made. So combining those two things will be the basis for a show that I want should appeal to cinephiles all the world over. This will be a show where we discuss great films, no matter how big or how small. A show where we dive deep into how the elements in the cosmos came together to make them great. And a show where we won't be afraid to get creative. So let's do this. In this episode, specifically in this segment, I'd like to go over what happens when you submit your film into a film festival. And I bring this up now because I have the pleasure of working for the Yonkers Film Festival, also known as the YoFI Fest, YoFI Festival, short for Yonkers Film Festival, in which I am on a panel of screeners. Who are the screeners? Screeners are people who are the gatekeepers, if you will. Wow, that sounds kind of egotistical, but it's true. We are the first group of people who get to see the film. And because this is of an independent festival, it's not Sundance, it's not Tribeca, but it's still voted one of the top 50 festivals in North America. But I mention that because usually it goes through screening process by being watched by screeners, and then it goes to programmers who are taking the screener's recommendation and submitting it to what will actually be in the festival. So it's an added round in bigger name festivals, but in this one, because it's a little smaller and more independent, independent is the politically correct term for smaller, we are the first people and the last people to watch the films and decide if they will continue into the festival itself. Anyway, what do screeners do? We get films submitted to us, and they are divided amongst us. I have personally if I pull it up, I can tell you right now, I have 15 films to watch, which totals to almost 8 hours worth of footage. I don't have to watch it all at once, and that wouldn't be fair if I did. I'm going to split it up so I can give every film that I see its due. And, oh man, I'm just looking at the genres right now. They come in all types of genres and styles. I have a couple documentaries, I have some shorts, I have comedies, but I have horror films, and I hate horror films. I think that if you can pull it off and not make it cheesy or just scare people just to scare people for the sake of that, if you can actually have something interesting to say and make it a compelling story, a power to you, because that's hard to do. But I'm so scared. I'm scared at the smallest. I'm scared at night when the ice maker in the freezer goes off. I think someone broke into my house. So to watch a whole film that is in the horror genre, and things can be a hit and miss in this stage of the screening process. So I just got very nervous, and I think I'm going to have to do something to calm my nerves before I watch it. Good old Vicodin, never hurts anyone. Anyway, that's not what we're about. Sponsored by Big Pharma. No. So anyway, we got the films. We split it amongst us. We're a panel of several other screeners, and we watch the films and we give it a rating, given a number between 1 and 10. And generally, if it's above a 3, that's the main rule of festivals. If the film is above a 3, it could be in the long run for the festival. Below that, it's really going to get the axe, unfortunately. But there are tons of reasons why. And even so, even if we gave it a 3, there are still even more ways to consider the film. There's broken up into 2 parts called judging status, which means undecided, selected, not selected, an award winner potentially, what would be a finalist, a semifinalist, a quarterfinalist, or a nominee, or what's equally cool, but I mean, I know it's not desirable, but it's something, an honorable mention. Those are how you are judging each film, what you want it to be categorized as. And then on the other side of it is the submission status that comes afterwards. And those are when you categorize a film as in consideration, incomplete, disqualified, or withdrawn completely. Generally, that rating of under a 3 would apply to things like that. And when you are given your films, you are given the project name, what kind of film it is. Is it a documentary? Is it a horror film? Oh my God. A narrative feature, a comedy short, a comedy feature, or even other things like family film, an animated short, LGBTQIA short. Things keep getting categorized and categorized and categorized. I just saw all the films I have to go through. I'm getting a little overwhelmed. And next to the project name and the categorization, you get the country it's from. And actually, surprisingly, I have, how many do I have? Let me count really quick. I have 3, me personally, in the films I was given to review, I have 3 international films. I have a film from Australia I just saw, and that's a comedy short category. I have one from Russia, and it's a documentary short. Why do I feel like it's automatically about war and oppression? I don't know. Could be Russian history. Anyway, and then the third country I have, other than from the United States, so technically the 4th country and the 3rd international country is Luxembourg, another documentary. And I'm really looking forward to that because that means that the YoFI Fest has international appeal and it's a wider audience and a wider competition, which is only going to help the festival grow and gain a little more notoriety and some traction, and that leads to sponsorship, which leads to increased size, increased venue, increased capacity, increased ability. Okay, and next to that is the running time. They can be, a lot of festivals will put a length of maximum running time for your film, but we don't. So I have some that are a 6-minute movie, a 15-minute movie, an hour and a half movie. The longest I have is a 2-hour movie. And it's not a horror movie. Perfect. I don't have to sit through that. And then next to the running time is the judging status. Like I said, how I'm going to consider it. Am I going to make it undecided? Will I not have an opinion? Will I select it to go further? Will I not select it? Do I think it's award winning? Could it be a finalist or a semi or a quarter finalist? Or just give it a shout out, a little honorable shout out. And then next to that is the date that it was submitted. We had a cutoff date of May, beginning of May. So things are not going to go past that, but we were receiving submissions from as early as March. There's an advantage to submitting early, and that advantage is financial. It's called the early bird. Just like going to dinner at 4 p.m., you get a reduced price, a special menu, the same exact thing. You don't have to pay a submission fee as high as it would during the standard time of submitting, and especially the later time of submitting. There is a late fee, and that could be tremendously bigger than what it would cost had you gotten it in earlier or super early in the early bird part. So you want to consider those costs when making your film and getting it through this last hurdle of viewership. You don't want to add that to the already high list of expenses that you accumulated in making a movie because it's expensive. So it might seem like I don't get to benefit from a film festival because I have to pay for it to get seen. That's just the way it is. I think that if your film is good and you worked hard on it, and good can mean anything, it's really subjective, but something with heart and something well made will always be seen by anyone, no matter who sees it. Like, that's going to be recognizable from the get-go and will be super appreciated. So your film could really luck out in the end. And the way you make money is winning the cash prizes, the rewards, really. They're the best way to get your money back. And obviously, the bigger the festival, the bigger the name of the festival, the bigger the cash if you win. But you need these smaller festivals to help gain the traction that you need to be seen by these bigger festivals. So everything is connected. And don't negate these smaller festivals that are very important and probably have a larger base. More people have access to these smaller festivals. You can see the movies easier. So they're going to have more people, a bigger audience. And that's the key to creating buzz about your film. So that maybe these bigger festivals, which are more exclusive, but they're just bigger in the sense that they have the big name sponsorships and they have the celebrities and they have all the gizmos and gadgets to make it a big show. They're going to notice you by the amount of people who like your movie. So going to these smaller festivals that have a larger audience is how you do it. So everything is connected and you just got to send your film out to every festival you can think of. There are 3,000 festivals alone, I believe, in the US. If you watch my previous episode where I go into the 3 big film festivals, I did mention that there are a plethora of smaller ones that you should be starting out with, and you should be submitting your film. Don't overlook it. Don't think that, oh, this is a weird name, so it's a weird festival, no one's going to watch it. You never know. That's sometimes where these promoters and film producers look to for something, and then they will help you take it to these bigger name festivals, to Cannes, to Sundance, to Tribeca, to Toronto. So everything is dependent upon each other, and just keep submitting and keep rocking and keep making. I wish you the best. I wish you really the best. And that's what I think being a screener is helping me do. It's helping me become exposed to budding filmmakers, people trying to get their foot in. The fact that they created and completed a film and they got some sort of funding for it because they completed it and they made it and they wrote it and they directed it and they cast it and they did everything that's required to make it a film. They got it out there. So first off, I am applauding you. I'm not going to actually clap my hands because it'll mess up the audio. But I will seriously give you all my praise because that's a big feat in and of itself. It's not easy to do. There's obstacles after obstacles. Nothing's ever easy. Okay? Something or someone whose job was very important to your film always falls through. I've had lighting guys get sick with COVID once. That was back in the summer when we were allowed to reopen for filming, and we had to scramble to figure out where to get another guy and who was able to get tested, and it's a whole rigmarole that's just so stressful. And that's a unique thing to this year with COVID, obviously, but that idea of somebody or something trying to derail you unintentionally or intentionally, but obviously in this case the sickness is unintentional, that derails you and makes you have to think quickly on your feet. So maybe all those improv classes I've taken really help. Anyway, number 1, they made a film. Number 2, they got the means to submit it to a festival and get it this far so that I'd even see it, which is great. They're on their way, and I applaud them. So this is a really big deal, and I'm so happy I get to be exposed to new filmmakers and that maybe we could talk to one day on here on my show, and I could meet and collaborate in person and just get to pick their brain and see what they're doing, what they're all about. I think that would be such an honor, and I'm really happy that I get to see these new films and I get to share them with you and let you know about them. I think that's great. So stay tuned for the second segment, where I go a little bit into more of the screening process, what we do as screeners, and I will try to disprove some myths a lot of people think happen in the screening process. So stay tuned.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. It keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Welcome back. In this segment, I'd like to do a rapid fire question and answer of some common questions that people have when submitting their films to film festivals, particularly in the screening stage of the whole process. Most film festivals will insist that each film is screened in its entirety and it's judged on its own merits, right? You want it to be looked at objectively. You want it to be looked at fairly. But I'll tell you a little secret. The truth is that the exact process of watching it and judging it and giving it a certain submission status, that whole thing, it varies widely depending on the festival. And this, in turn, makes a lot of filmmakers skeptical about the festival screening process, especially because us festivals were pretty secretive about it. We don't disclose what's going on. We're not in touch with the filmmaker until the very end when we decide if it's going through or if it's not. Some festivals even have these bigger ones obviously will have a whole PR team, a public relations team who put out publications and who put out statements on their behalf because, they're too important to speak for themselves. And generally the PR team is always asked about updates on films. Some filmmaker with nerves of steel will actually toe the line and call them. And they'll say, what's going on with my film? And the PR team will always say the same answer. Our team doesn't allow us to divulge too much information about our programming process. As in, you have to wait like the rest of them. It's kind of like how talent agents for anybody, for actors, for writers, whoever, they've become very holier than thou, and their submission process is so specific depending on what they want. And should you do something different, that automatically disqualifies you. And I don't think that's necessarily fair, right? They have directions, but we're all adults and we're all trying to accomplish the same thing. So I think that a little leeway could be given. But again, I am only but a humble screener for the Yonkers Film Festival. Anyway, and because of that secretive nature, a lot of filmmakers, especially those doing this for the first time, really question if these are worth it, if they'll have a shot at breaking into these bigger festivals via these smaller festivals. And to that, I say yes. If you're just going straight to the top without checking out the things along the way, the smaller festivals, that's what that would be, then I would say no. And I think you are rushing the process and you're not paying your dues and you're not learning. And so you wouldn't, had you broken the mold, so to speak, and gotten to the top without the natural pathway, then you're not going to be ready. And you're going to fall big time. And that's the truth. Other questions that filmmakers have is, I thought this was interesting. Do the programmers and the screeners, do they really watch the film all the way through? I say yes. I know that we specifically are encouraged to watch the film from beginning to end in one sitting, not to pause it, not to get up to go do something and then come back, and not to take notes in between. Okay, they encourage us to watch it from beginning to end in one sitting, and then we can take our notes, then we can give it our rating and give it our thoughts and all that stuff, and ultimately give it the score that will send it in one direction to the festival or the other direction and tell the filmmaker, we appreciated it, but you've got to try again next year. We all hate that, but we all sometimes need to hear that, and there are reasons. And I would be the type of person who would provide my feedback directly to the filmmaker, because it's nothing more frustrating than thinking you did really well or thinking that you submitted a good project, and you genuinely did, but it didn't make the cut for whatever reason. And then that's a blow, and that's painful. And then on top of that, you don't get to hear why. I know that a lot of people claim that we can't provide personal feedback to everybody or we'd never finish. That could be true, and it's unfortunate. Then I think you need to expand the screening panel and add more so that more people can be watching them, and it gives you more time personally to give feedback to people, because they have less films to watch if more people are there watching the films in total. And I think the filmmaker would really appreciate that more individualized attention. I know that with auditions in the past, I would be, in my head, I'd be killing it, and I know that because it felt good. That's the ultimate indication that you're doing well, is when it feels good and you feel super connected to the material and you kind of forget where you are. It's a really cool outer body experience. And then, you can obviously gauge the auditioner's face, but it's more of a intuition than anything. Because if you feel it, they feel it. And then we all feel it. And then we're all connected and happy, and it's a kumbaya moment. So there's nothing worse than having that happen to you and then not hearing a word back from them. Sometimes you hear no, but no reason, and which is probably worse than not hearing anything at all, which has happened as well. Because when you don't hear anything at all ever again, it's like, oh, maybe the project fell through. You can think of a lot of different things. Not that they went another direction with somebody else who took your role. But when you hear no and sorry, better luck next time, there's nothing worse than not knowing why. So I personally like to provide feedback to the films that I watch. And I will ask my director, maybe for the filmmaker's email address, so I can provide that. And I also give a detailed rating, description, and rating when I score the film, so that maybe they can see it and have access to it, so they know how I thought. But a lot don't do this, like I said, because their screeners could be overwhelmed by the number of films they watch, and so they are focused on the quantity and not the quality. So this is a kind of the first step where a lot of submissions go off to pasture, if you will. Like there are people who are film festival strategists. That's crazy where they discover new ways to navigate the film festival world, and they could be helpful resources as you yourself as a filmmaker are trying to navigate the space too. But there are people who come up with these different strategies and different reasons why things go one way or not the other, and it's a real study in human behavior, I think. Another thing is that screeners can be incentivized to watch a lot of films and receive tickets to the festival or passes to the festival based on the number of films. So the more they're watching, kind of the more tickets they get. Is that what pay for play was? Is that what that means? Which means like they're going to overload themselves on films, and I'm going to watch 20 to 30, 35, 40 films so I can get those number of tickets for free. We don't do that at Yonkers. I think I probably will have to pay to go see the festival, even though I'm working for them. But that's the name of the game, and that's what I choose to have, something quality and pure and something really where we're all learning, rather than just give me, and then I will do the least amount of output, but I still got something out of it. I, as a screener, shouldn't be getting anything out of it other than learning who these new filmmakers are. And that's okay with me. I'm fine with that. So like I said, us at Yonkers Film Festival, we are encouraged to watch the film beginning to end before we start rating it. However, if there, as is a rule with most festivals, if there's something like explicitly gory, bloody, violent, or like pornographic, obviously we are not going to have to be subjected to that. So that's an instance where it can happen, where we don't watch the whole thing. Festivals actually do receive submissions where that is a big theme of the person's film. There's a lot of blood, there's a lot of sex. I haven't gone through all my films yet, but so far I haven't come across that. Should I be offended if I do or don't come across that? What does that say about me and the type of films that they assigned me? And what do my programmers think of me? I hope I get, just so I can, get scandalized for a moment. All in all, though, yes, we watch the film in its entirety. We won't truncate, we won't skip a beat, we won't get up to make a phone call in the middle of your film. I'm going to watch it beginning to end, so be mindful of that when submitting your film, and way before that, when you're creating your film and writing your film and shooting it, be mindful of the type of stuff you show. If you want it to get seen, make sure that it's, you can like I said, you can scandalize a little, but keep it tasteful and keep it relevant for the story. Don't just show something bloody or something sexy, I guess. Don't just show that for the sake of showing it. Make sure it's relevant so that we won't be turned off by what we see and, hurt your chances of your film getting to where you want it to be. In these bigger name festivals, a film is watched by sometimes 2 members of a screening committee or by a lead programmer, but if you have 2 people watching the same movie, you're going to get extra feedback and extra attention, and it'll give it 2 different scores for that film. So that the people who are in the head of festival programming, they will look at those scores and the feedback that would probably be different from 2 different screeners. They will take that feedback and they will review it, and they will watch the films again with that feedback in mind before coming to their own conclusion and before determining if it will go on to the next level of reviews. So it can be a very thorough process. And because us at the Yonkers Film Festival don't have 1, 2, 3, 4 tiers of reviewers, it's kind of just us, I will take it upon myself to go through the films that I watch that I have more than once so that I can maybe come up to a different conclusion, and maybe it'll be more positive than how I felt about it the first time around. Because when you watch something one way, you're absorbing it and it's appealing or it's not appealing to you automatically, and then you put it in a box of I liked it or I didn't like it. But when you give it a second chance, things change. You become a little more pragmatic, and you can become a little more analytical and think of the film in a different lens, no pun intended. But I will why is that not that funny? I don't know why I'm laughing. But doing so, I can ask myself different questions like, oh, is this appropriate for the genre it categorized itself in? If so, how's the story? Is it following a traditional plot, or is it kind of going off on its own? And if it's going off on its own, does it still feel like a scene? Does each scene feel like it has a beginning, middle, and end? And how is that being executed? Is the writing good? Is the acting good? I can think about that a little more critically. And that could change my initial scoring of it for sure. It's a competition after all, right? So sometimes we have to be a little cutting edge and a little, I don't want to say rude, but kind of hard and removed, because these are these filmmakers' babies, really. Their blood, sweat, and tears and their money, odds are their personal money, went into making this movie. So I try and treat it with respect. But at the end, it's a competition, so I have to know what's going to be better for the festival as a whole, what will support the festival and get people interested. But I will give everyone a fair chance, because I would want that for my film when it comes time to submit my work into festivals as well. Please stay tuned for the 3rd segment, where I go into if connections really matter in the film festival world.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching.
Hey!
The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the third segment of this episode. I would like to touch upon something interesting, food for thought, if you will, is if connections in the film festival world matter. Do you need to know somebody to get ahead? I like to think that this could be one area of the whole entire industry where maybe you don't need that connection. Because all your submissions are seen. They will be watched. Whether they're watched from beginning to end, that's something else. I do that. But, people busier than me who, maybe won't have the time to watch it from beginning to end might not. So, they should send it to me because I will watch the heck out of your thing because I love to judge. I'm a judgmental person. But American Idol, you should hire me. Anyway. I like to think that this is the one place where maybe it's not about who you know. It could literally be about what you made, which is a dying concept in this industry. But I like to think because since all films are going to be reviewed, if you made a good movie, it'll go where it's meant to go. It'll be seen by who it's supposed to be seen. And, rated and judged accordingly. But if it's good and worthwhile and important and says something and speaks to people, as all movies, should, their original purpose to entertain, then there's no reason that it shouldn't advance in any festival, whether it's a small one, whether it's me at Yonkers, or whether it's one of the bigger ones. I guess it doesn't hurt, right? It doesn't hurt who you know. But I think in a true competition, in the nature of a competition, if it's as pure and wholehearted as it's made out to be, then I think it makes really little to no difference whether the film has a campaign behind it. It didn't help with this year's Oscars, as we saw. Films that had the biggest buzz and the biggest support didn't win. Or have the outcome that most people expected. So I think maybe now we're starting to lose the notion of it's who you know to succeed, which is fantastic. I stuck around long enough in this business to finally see that happen. I've been praying for that day to happen. So I'm glad. So I think that a film festival can set us back to the course of everyone gets an equal opportunity. Because at a big festival like Sundance, it's not about who you know, because they are on top of all film projects that are taking place in these smaller festivals. Like I mentioned, it's important to, succeed and submit to these lower ones because you don't know who's going to be watching. And the Sundance Film Festival, which is the biggest festival in America, not North America. It's one of two. You have Toronto as well. But in America itself, the Sundance Film Festival, their director of programming, Kim Yutani, is looking everywhere for the next film for her festival. So they're on top of everything. So it's important that you are taking notice and giving, these smaller festivals a chance. And I say that because they are looking to see what's out there. They're looking to see what's being submitted and viewed and liked, so that by the time Sundance opens up their submission, they're aware of all the films already. They know a little bit about who you are, about how your film did, about what it's about, because it's been vetted. It's a vetting process. So that's even better than connections, is having it viewed by trusted peers and getting their feedback and opinions, so that you can kind of make your own decision and be like, I trust that person. They have good judgment, their experience. So if they like this, it must be good. I'm going to give it a chance and play it at my festival too. There's a financial aspect here. Film festivals have to be financially sustainable. They can't not make money, or they won't happen anymore. And to make this possible, it means that festival organizers have to keep marketability in mind. If the film that is in the festival has any A-list talent, which you're needing for promotion, even in casting, you're thinking about that all the way back in casting. Could we afford maybe someone of a bigger name for promotional purposes? Because that's what we're going to need to create the buzz and the traction to get ourselves moving forward. And a festival is thinking the same thing. If you have that well-known artist in the film, it's likely going to attract bigger audiences, and kind of more important, or I think equally important, the interest of the press, of critics, of the New York Times, of everyone all over the internet. Because if a film distributor or a studio wants to sponsor the opening night party that these big festival names have, Elton John always has his post Oscars party. Well, he did. He didn't have it last year or this year, but maybe next year. Vanity Fair hosts also another Oscar party. If a big name like that wants to sponsor their party, it's much more likely that the biggest, latest release of the festival, the one with the big name attached to it, it'll be selected for the festival. Should they be like, oh, that person's in it, it's profitable, we're going to go through and provide the funding that this festival needs to succeed, and for the film to succeed at the end of the day too. This is the business part of it. It's not pretty, it's not creative, and it seems like any other business, but it's a business after all, and that's the nature of what we're doing. So at the end of it, having a producer or somebody powerful who has a relationship with the festival, or a film in the festival because of a certain name attached to it, it could help it in the reviewing process. I like to think it wouldn't mess with the screener's mind. They wouldn't be influenced based on all that. They wouldn't be keeping in mind, oh, there's a lot of money behind this film for the film itself and for us as a festival, so it should go through. I hope that that's what they mean by they're reviewing its merits. And I like to think that if it's not good enough, it won't make the cut. It won't replace something that's deserving to be there, but that doesn't have all the backing that this particular one had. But you never know. Right? Nepotism is everywhere. Pay for play, I mentioned again. I've said that twice in this episode. I've never said it in my life, and here I've said it twice in the last half hour. I still don't know what it means, but I think it's relevant. So let me know what it means, and if I'm using it correctly. That type of practice exists, but I like to think that in a film festival, it's the last sacred place where we can actually focus on talents and the quality of a project and let that speak for itself. Something also worth mentioning is in certain film festival application portals, like how you upload your film and then submit it to the festival. Like, for example, for Yonkers, we are having our films uploaded onto Vimeo and then submitted through Film Freeway, where we watch it and rate it and do all the things we need to do. There's an option to write a cover letter and explaining who you are, giving a little introduction, your background, the influence for the film, your personal influences, maybe talk about your budget. I wouldn't submit through that. I wouldn't fill that out. Don't bother. I don't think it'll get read. I haven't seen them. None of the films I have that attached to it, so I think that's where it comes from. But what is important to write is the synopsis and the logline. Those will both tell me what your film is about, and the more riveting it is, the more interesting it is, the more I'll be excited to read it and to read what you wrote and to watch your film. So focus on those, because sometimes I've seen really bad ones, subpar ones. There's spelling mistakes. These are avoidable things. And, you put a lot of work into your film and in your script, so you putting that same amount of work into your synopsis is like the cherry on top. It's a smaller part, but it's equally important, and together it completes what you were trying to set out to do. Don't cut corners in these small, unavoidable, kind of stupid ways. Okay? Make the synopsis as beautifully crafted as, your monologue that you work so hard to convey your message. Make sure your synopsis is going to excite me to go listen to that monologue you worked hard on. It's a gateway to that monologue, and I want to know what you wrote, so make sure I'm interested based on your synopsis. So please stay tuned for the 4th segment.
Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Welcome back. Here we finally are at the 4th segment. First, thank you for listening all the way through. I really appreciate it. And I hope that you've learned something about the screening process, the programming process, and the film festival inner workings and the mechanics of it all through this episode. And I also, most importantly, hope that anyone who's an aspiring filmmaker out there listening is not discouraged. This is a normal method and a tried and true method of getting your film seen after its completion and making it a real movie. This is how you make movies. And I think that festivals are a great way for exposure. They're a great way to advance your film, because let's say you start off with a short film and it makes it into a festival and it wins some money and it wins some prizes and some titles. A bigger producer with more means, or a distributor, or a studio. I mean, these are the, this is a dream. It's like a high school basketball player getting the NFL. Wow. I don't know anything about sports. I'm a movie maker and I'm a writer and I'm an actor in theater. I don't know anything about sports. No, okay. So in high school, basketball player gets the basketball professional people. What are they called? The NBA. There we go. I had to look that up. Please don't judge me. It's like them getting some kid from who knows where, getting the NBA to come see him play, and they like him, and they want him to practice more with them. I don't know the terminology, but you get what I mean. Anyway, with your short film, if the right people see it and like it, they could offer you the resources to make it into a feature film, which means you can have a bigger story, have the money for a bigger, well-known cast, and a very capable crew. And these are all really cool things. And if you already have a feature film and you get it seen at festivals and it goes through the same award-winning cycle, then a distributor could pick it up, like Netflix, HBO Max, Amazon, Hulu, where will be seen by the millions. And that's what you want. And that's what you want. And that's the process. But it's a daunting process. It's a frustrating process. But it's our process. And it's what we created. And it's what we're going to deal with. And we're going to learn to succeed in it. We're going to learn to succeed in it. There's no other option. And we're going to do that together. That'll be great. Some filmmakers might be weary of festivals. They might say, I have to pay for this. And some films get entitled to a waiver if they know the right people to ask, and I don't. I mean, is this worth it? Is anyone going to even watch this? Do people care? Shouldn't I just try and go straight to these bigger name sources to get my film made? And can I just get it played at the AMC movie theater? The answer is no. Those movies get to the movie theater via distributors. Where do distributors come from? They come from studios. They come from production companies. And where do those people get their material from? If not from their staff of writers. And who are their staff of writers? They are, people who pounded the pavement with their scripts in hand, getting them into festivals, who eventually through luck and talent and hard work and a lot of crying in public. Is that just me? Okay. Well, anyway, all those other things I just said, they did. And they got their film successfully made and viewed. Because it was what they were meant to do. We all want to do this, but whether we're meant to do it as a career or a hobby is a sucky thing to analyze. But we all will have to one way or another. If we produce good work, and if it's all we can think about doing, and only doing for the rest of our lives, then it's meant to be your work and your job and your career. And the people will recognize that, and they will see it, and eventually it will pay off. So my answer is film festivals are very much worth it, and they're very much still relevant. I mean, when I went on Google to get some articles for references, I typed in "are film festivals," and the first options that the auto fill-ins that came in were, "Are film festivals still relevant? Are film festivals worth it?" And so I was like, oh my God, other people are thinking this. So you're not alone if it's crossed your mind once or twice. It's even crossed my mind. But being able to now work on behalf of a festival to choose which films go through or not has been really eye-opening. All teaching me what people are looking for in a film that gets chosen, and it's things that I can implement into my own films. And they're pretty obvious things. They're things that you can come up with on your own. It's stories that are relevant to you and that are well made, and they're interestingly portrayed through maybe an angle that haven't been before. And because it's being told by you, it's going to be different from everything else. And any chance to have an audience is worth it, no matter what level it's at. I remember my community theater days before I was doing off-Broadway. In community theater, the theaters are in a tiny little church basement in a church itself, not just the basement, but in the where you hold your services. Or sometimes these tiny little black box theaters. They're called black box because the four walls of this tiny measly room, the floors, the ceilings, they are all painted black. And that helps because you can kind of create the illusion of any location that your scene takes place in when everything is black. There's an absence of color. When I was in conservatory during the movement class days, we'd have to wear all black to be devoid of color so we can focus on form and body and kind of create this unified image together. It really does work. And then you can play around with the lighting and sounds and certain props, and it's very limited props in these black box theaters, but you can have enough to create, you put two boxes together with two boxes side by side in a long form, and then you keep a larger square size box as the behind it and that's a bed. You use your imagination, but it works. Anyway, in these type of places that I did so many years in, we'd be happy with 10 people. We didn't always get that. The most I ever had in these places was, actually probably I think it was in around the 80s or 90s, amount of people. And that as an audience turnout. And I thought I was like riding that wave for weeks. I was like, we had I kept bringing it up to, we had almost 100 people. We had twice as much people as they expected. We were just the talk of the town. Everyone wanted to come see us. But odds are we'd get less than 10. However, we were so happy people came. We were so happy there was somebody there to see us. Even if there wasn't anybody there, we just wanted a chance to perform. And it's the same thing with these filmmakers. You can have a smaller turnout. But now, do you care? Your film is getting seen. Your film is being played. Movie theaters, sometimes certain show times of the day, maybe during the day or the afternoon, 2 people would be in the room watching it, but they still played it. And the film can say it's still played in the theaters for this many weeks. It's all about how long it played, not to how many people. So it's the same idea with film festivals. Even if they're smaller or don't have as big a name or recognition, there's still going to be somebody watching it. Even so, a screener watched it, and that's already audience accumulation. I consider it. I'd say I was in your audience watching it. So it's getting exposure one way or another. So trust the process. Trust people behind the process. It's good to be, questioning a little bit, but we're doing you right. I won't do any of you wrong if you submit me your film to watch. And I can promise you that. So trust what's going on. Plan your next steps. Always have an answer, because you don't know who's going to want to talk to you about your film that they saw in a festival, and they could really help you out. So if you're not prepared with a quick little pitch, it's called an elevator pitch. It's, what could you tell them about your project during the time frame of an elevator ride? What is that, 30 seconds or something? Less than a minute. What can you tell them that's key to your film's plot and to the story and what you want to tell them and how you want to do it? And can you get that all in 30 seconds and keep them interested? So it's a challenge, it's an exercise, but you always have to have one in your back pocket. That's the same thing with submitting to festivals. Always know what you're going to say. Always know what you want to make sure they remember about you, because they're probably going to only take away a couple sentences at most of what you're saying. So make sure it's what you want them to hear. And with that, I want to thank you for listening to the GSMC Movie Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. If you like this episode, please subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That would really help us. See, reviews get seen. We see what you say. So just like in a festival, you're going to see what we say at some point. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.